Welcome. This is Laura Rose from Rose Coaching, and the intent behind these series of webinars is to share strategies and tips on how to not only recover from the COVID-19 shutdown, but perhaps even come out of it with some new skills and knowledge. Today, I'm here with Bryson from MIT Technology Review, Lukas Chaffee from QiqoChat, and Wendy Freeman from Be Bright Events. Today's topic centers around how the COVID-19 epidemic has impacted events planning, and even the technology and tools used in event planning. Today, the COVID-19 stay-at-home situation has changed how we currently look at live events. Even though restrictions are lowered, we are still restricted to the number of people per event, as well as additional safety policies regarding masks, temperature checking, and continuous sanitation procedures. This puts additional overhead and conditions for both the business and the consumer. Because of these issues, COVID-19 has accelerated the integration of virtual and augmented reality technology into every aspect of the event planning and event technology. Once the restrictions are removed, consumers will still be shy to attend large events without the proper safety measures in place. In today's market, businesses must find alternative ways to conduct their events within the current restrictions in order to be able to sustain their businesses post-COVID-19. The companies that continued to do business during this time pivoted to a more virtual delivery experience. Web conferences, Zoom, and live streaming events became the normal way to gather, exchange information, and entertain. The number of available virtual and augmented reality conference tools are on the rise. With this abundance comes confusion and overwhelmment. How does one go about selecting the right tool for them? That's not an easy question to answer. It simply takes some trial and error on the consumer's part. Luckily, most suppliers offer free basic versions for free trials in which you can determine if the tools and features meet your needs. In regards to virtual event tools, many of us have already been exposed to one form or another, via invitation by friends, family, or business acquaintances. We can add those experiences to our decisions. My best recommendation? The best tool is the one that works for you. Everyone is different. Every need is different. So please keep your target audience in mind. What works well for you may be a little too complicated for grandma. One last thought, you are not alone. Don't waste too much time trying to figure it out yourself. Lukas, Brian, Wendy, and I are here to help. So with that in mind, let's find out more about them.
Yeah, thanks. Sure, Laura. So my name is Bryson. I'm the Director of Event Content and Client Experiences at MIT Technology Review. In my Technology Review, we run a series of events. We also have a media side with publication and journalism and reporting, but this is for the events group. And we run a series of live and now virtual events. And it's my team's responsibility to program those events, which means essentially deciding on topics and speakers and schedules for our content.
Great. That leads us into Wendy.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. I'm Wendy Freeman. I am the owner and founder of Be Bright Events, and we are a boutique event company that helps to strategize, plan, market, and launch experiential events, predominantly for those that are purpose-driven, mission-centered, people that are making massive impact in their clients' lives.
Excellent. Great panelist for this topic. Great. And Lukas.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much, Laura, for having us on. So my name's Lukas Chaffee. I'm in New York. I'm a software engineer and an open space facilitator. It's a way of having online conferences. And I look very much forward to our discussion today.
Great. Thank you, Lukas. And my name is Laura Rose, and I help busy professionals and entrepreneurs create effective systems so that they can comfortably delegate to others, be more profitable, and have the time to do the things they really want to be doing, even if they don't have the time to learn new technology or train their staff. I have a knack for taking complex concepts and turning them into on-time and profitable projects. I'm currently working with different small businesses on their marketing strategies, marketing research, and brand monitoring. Now that we have the introductions out of the way, let's get back to our topic at hand. Brian, since MIT Technology Review regularly discusses technology's impact on our lives and careers, what are your thoughts on the topic? For instance, how are you now converting 2 live events to virtual, and have you learned from these transformations?
We have learned a lot from our transformations, for sure. We just closed our second virtual, formerly live event. We ran our first virtual event on March 23rd, which, if you think back, was right at the peak of the craziness. That event was supposed to be a live event in San Francisco, and we had 10 days to move it online and reimagine it. And then we just, the one we ran just a week or 2 weeks ago, we had a little bit more planning time. So I think we've learned a ton, and I think the biggest lesson that we've learned out of it is that the medium and the platform really dictate and what you're going to do. Our events are about 500 to 1,000 person events. They are for C-level executives in the technology industry. So they're kind of a here's what you need to know type events. That one was specifically about AI, just to give you the context of it. We had some, we bring in some fairly high profile speakers, and we give access to the audience to ask questions to these speakers. It's, the biggest value proposition of our events is that you actually get to connect, and there's always great Q&As that go along with it. And, without fail, every session, there's far more questions than ever get answered. So our plan in the virtual, in the real world, at a live event, we would actually take the speaker physically from the stage and put them in a meet the speaker zone, and they could have conversations which sometimes literally go on for hours, if not the entire day, if the speaker has time. And so our virtual transformation of that was to move them to a chat room where you could do Q&A with the speakers and in a typed text format. Seems logical, but in practice, the process of moving the speaker from the video stage to the QA room was cumbersome enough that the attendees couldn't follow it. It meant that they had to turn off their broadcast of the actual show that was still ongoing, and it essentially made that Q&A portion impossible. We promoted this heavily and couldn't deliver on it. And it was really just a limitation of the platform. It didn't make that seamless transition. It was cumbersome. Speakers had to log out and come back in under a different account. It just didn't work. So we realized very quickly that if the platform doesn't support what you want to achieve, you're not going to achieve it. And then the other thing is the medium matters too. We're used to live stage, and we essentially view ourselves as producing theater, and now we're television producers. And that has implications on attention span, that has implications on timing of the content and how you deliver it, the framing of it. Essentially it means you're working with shorter attention spans, and you're competing for attention with email, much like this is right now, right? People can easily be multitasking this. So I think that's the biggest thing we learned is medium and platform dictates what you can and can't do.
Right, and you wouldn't have learned this without the experience you went through. So that's great.
So, on the job.
Yeah. So what has surprised you about your online audience versus a regular live audience?
Mm-hmm. So it was quite a transformation. A live audience, the last event would have been, had it been live, our last event would have been on the MIT campus in Cambridge, Mass. And would have been a primarily local audience, so a lot from Boston, New York. We would draw from that geographic area. When we went virtual with that event, we drew and as we might get people coming from maybe 10, 15 other countries. When we went virtual, we drew an audience that was 40% international, with representation from 55 different countries and 41 different states. So it seems obvious, right? What we consider a North American event and really a fairly East Coast centric event became a worldwide event. So that was interesting. We pulled on the attention span after the event, and what surprised me there is we asked, what percentage of the time were you engaged with the broadcast as opposed to feeding the kids, doing email, etc. And the number was about 75%, which I thought was high.
Yeah.
And I think, it just meant that if you have the right content and the right delivery, people will engage and pay attention. So that was a surprise. And I think the last one I would say, because our team is the one picking the speakers and the topics, we found it much easier to get higher profile speakers. As an example, at this last event, when it went virtual, we had the CEOs of Zoom, Slack, and Verizon, which we sort of called the technology platform of the day, all on air. And in a normal show, we probably would have got maybe one of them, because of the need to travel, hotels. You're asking for more or less 2 days, maybe 3, depending on where they're coming from of their time. In the virtual world, you're asking for 2, maybe 3 hours of their time, and they're much more available.
And you offer them a wider audience now. It's global versus local.
Yeah,
so that's attractive.
Yeah.
So do you see MIT continuing to deliver virtual events in the future, or going back to live, or maybe a hybrid?
All of the above. If you had asked me this question in January before all this happened, I would have said we are a live event group, an organization with little interest in virtual, and if somebody little interest in hybrid. And our experience has been so positive delivering virtual events that we are going big on it. We are going to make it a separate business line now. Nice. We will have a series of virtual events in parallel with our live events. We think they're distinct markets and a distinct audience, and we will cater them accordingly. So we will definitely obviously continue with our live events once that returns to normal. So we'll have the live, we'll have the virtual, and I definitely have some thoughts on doing a hybrid model. I think, where I would never have thought it possible before. I think there is a market I think what we've discovered is there's demand for our content for people who can't travel. And you can do a dual event where you have the live stage event and a virtual component as well. So we'll be looking at that, but it's a lot to focus on. So we're gonna start with the live and virtual, and then work on the hybrid as we go.
And consumers are accustomed. I mean, it's been longer than 30 days. Yeah. They're used to this type of environment now. Yeah. So they've become to expect this convenience.
Mm-hmm. I love it too. I mean, I'm not missing the travel and the setup and all the challenges of the live stage. They're just different challenges now for virtual, but I'm not missing the airports.
And this brings us to Wendy. Wendy, you've been shifting from live to virtual as well. You've been planning events for over 15 years. So how difficult was it for you to shift from live to virtual?
So, for me, it wasn't as difficult because I have experience. I actually used to plan the in-person events just like Brian did for a technology company. So very similar, but with that, we always did virtual events as well, but it was more of the webinar format. So it was a natural pivot. And what I realized is that, when it comes to planning events, that 80% are really the same. It's whether it's in person or virtual. The 20% comes down to tech and touch. So Brian, mentioned that, and it's really all about, the most difficult part for me was really to wrap my head around what are the components of a live event that make it so experiential, and how can you replicate that in the virtual space? How can you really, just because you can't shake hands with people, what can we do to create community, to elicit engagement, and really form those connections that are formed in an in-person event. So that's where, I really had to think outside of the box, learn tons of different technologies to figure out how am I going to select the best technology based on my client's goals.
So what would be the first step in hosting a virtual event?
I mean, well, the first step obviously is, you have to decide on your event, who is your audience, what are your goals, what problem are you going to solve, or what are their challenges, and how is your event going to help them to solve it? So I always say that success starts with strategy. And if you don't have those things really hammered in, then it's going to be more of a struggle as you progress. I mean, obviously then you go through the same thing you would in an in-person event, figuring out who your speakers are, what is your agenda, all of that. Where I really focus the most of my time with my clients is on that engagement piece. So how can we facilitate breakouts? How do we facilitate the connections? And in doing so, a boring presentation on stage is going to be even more boring behind a screen. A non-attractive PowerPoint is going to be even less attractive behind the screen. And as Brian mentioned, you have all the competing things going on. You have the kids, you got the pets, you got email. It's so easy. In an in-person event, you're not just going to get up and walk out of the room. You're not going to pull up your phone and just have your head buried in it the entire time. So what can you do to make a virtual event a true experience? How can you make it two-sided, which actually becomes more of a benefit, because in the in-person space, you very rarely have, now Brian's events, you do have the opportunity, but very rarely are you at an event where you actually get that level of engagement with the speakers. With virtual, you're 18 inches away from the speaker. You're able to engage in a much greater way. So that's something that I spend a lot of my focus on. And then the other thing is learning how to facilitate those conversations. It comes down to intentional agenda design, intentional facilitation of, if you're sending people into breakouts, what are the questions you're having them answer? How are you having them answer it? Who's going to keep time? Who's going to come back and speak to the group? So just really being intentional and being the engineer of life-giving questions that when you go into the smaller breakout rooms, it's going to create the space for people to be more vulnerable. And that's where I truly believe those connections are built. So that's, with most of my clients, I encourage all of my clients to do some sort of breakout, small group, comeback, crowdsourcing, group shares. And even in the ones that don't, then it comes down to intentional agenda design. Are you going to have a live speaker with a PowerPoint? Don't do 6 of those in a row. Integrate it with a panel, do it with a hot seat, a Q&A, so that there's constantly a flow that's happening that keeps people engaged. And the last thing that I'll talk about, I just actually hosted my own virtual event last week, teaching event planners how to create experiences. And one of their biggest takeaways that it just happens naturally for me that I didn't realize was state change. Creating that state change. So if you're asking people to take notes, ask them to wave their pen in front of the computer. Before you go into a breakout, have them do something silly to, transport. Same thing. I don't know if I'm sure you have been on Zooms where people clap and it just doesn't come across well. So, this and showing energy, just little things like that. We brought in a DJ, and it's those little things that gets people back engaged. Like, you'll notice they're sitting there, they're watching, and then you do something like that and everyone has a smile on their face. So it's just that little state change. It's good for the speakers because they're speaking to an engaged audience, and it's great for the attendees because it brings them back to whatever, even if they were on a separate screen working on something, knowing when they're like, all right, everybody wave your pen, everybody's like scrambling to get back to the screen to wave their pen. So state change and music are also huge components of creating an experience.
Those are exceptional, and people without that experience that you've had wouldn't even think about those things. So that's great. And based on your experience, what are some of the most common mistakes you've seen people make in a virtual event?
I mean, definitely death by PowerPoint. just presentation after presentation. I mean, I kind of just spoke to the experience side of that, making sure that it's two-sided. There's a lot of technology mishaps that are happening because there's no shortage of platforms that are out there. So really knowing what are the capabilities of the different platforms that are going to accomplish your goals. Something else I've seen a lot is, there's no shortage of speakers looking for virtual stages right now. And so I've been to a bunch of events where the speakers are just so all over the place that they're not all focused on one specific topic, one issue, which can be great because you're then marketing to a very broad audience. But at the same time, the engagement level really decreases because people are tuning in for speaker A versus speaker B. And for me, in my business, I'm focusing on impact and change and personal growth and development. So for me, the events that I work on, it's what is your target market? What are the challenges they're currently facing? Mm-hmm. And who can I bring in to speak that is going to complement what I'm speaking about, but also, or my clients are speaking about, but also fast track their success? What are the complementary, not competitive and not just so broad and out there? I think it's a matter of, really knowing who your niche is and then communicating that to your speakers so they can tailor their presentation to speak specifically to your audience and not just broad, high level, so that people actually leave with tangible information that they can implement to gain results.
Excellent. And I've made some of those mistakes myself, specifically death by PowerPoint. I hide behind the PowerPoint. They're looking at the PowerPoint, they're not looking at me. But I know Lukas, he's got some great suggestions because he's a developer. He's actually created virtual event platform. So I bet these mistakes were just some of the reasons why you created this platform. But what are some other ones? Why did you build this platform?
QiqoChat is originally a tool for online communities to share knowledge with each other. We built it starting in 2013. And in 2015, we realized that video was really taking off and we started building on top of Zoom. So we became a way to stitch together 100 Zoom meetings so that people can move between them all very easily, as in moving between all the breakout sessions just as you can in a conference setting. And then we started to, why stop at Zoom? Why not integrate Microsoft Teams, Adobe Connect, Google Meet, and Jitsi? So now people can go through essentially whatever tool an organization likes to collaborate with, we connect it to all the other tools that are available. So you go into a breakout room and you've got Google Docs, or you've got Google Drawings, or a Google spreadsheet, or a collaborative whiteboarding tool. Kiko is really for events where you want people to think together. So this morning we got off a call with the executive vice president of the European Union, and it had young professionals from maybe about 25 different countries in Europe and Asia, and they were all talking about Europe's Green Deal. How do they have a green recovery? They don't know the answer before they go in. It's intentionally these types of events where they want to think together. So they decide the topics on the spot. And then they get very deep in all of these conversations and they bring it back together in a closing. So it's for online groups that want to think together and to create something that they don't know what the outcome is going to be when they start. But you invite all the right people with a compelling invitation, you give them the right tools in the moment, and then you also give them the freedom to move from breakout to breakout so they're not stuck in a place where they aren't contributing.
Yeah, I actually played with Kiko, and it was very easy to jump from one breakout session to the other. It was fun. So what is the range of event types that you are seeing using this tool?
Well, some government organizations like doing standard presentations where you've got maybe several parallel conversations happening but are more presentation style. Then you've got people who are in a community of practice. Say the European Union also had a network of people that do international dialogue and mediation between countries. So they're trying to figure out their future. So you get a community of practice coming together to think together. We had a remote disco. We had a birthday party. We had hackathons and workshops and whiteboarding sessions and dialogue across divides. So it's as much as you could do so many different types of events with Zoom. Zoom just comes, and then all these other tools you need, like Google Docs, you just bring that in. So people get so creative. And that's the most exciting part, is by providing a basic platform that lets them plug and play their favorite tools, then they surprise us.
Excellent. So going back to that, piggybacking on that, so what has surprised you about these other events? How it evolves or takes off?
The thing that surprised me most from one of the last events, when people were doing some heartfelt sharing, I was surprised at how heartfelt it got. And one of the women expressed specifically why when she normally goes to tech conferences where it's a conversational panel discussion, it's not where it's actually a lot of people talking, she finds that she has to actually yell to be heard. But when everyone is in an equal sized Zoom box, she said she felt as big as everybody else. And then what Brian had mentioned, by pulling in people from, just opening up space for people to come internationally to these events, which are otherwise limited normally to the United States, you get more access, more ideas, more intellectual diversity, and the quality of conversation can significantly increase. As Brian said, in retrospect, it's clear to us, but we didn't know that when we were going in. We were focused on building the experience. And then when the people come and fill the space, it creates a different event than would otherwise happen.
It's really great. So just one last thought is that consumers are used to doing this now, and the number of available virtual and augmented reality conference tools out there are on the rise. So with this abundance comes confusion and overwhelmment. So my best recommendation is just to use the best tool that works best for you. There's so many tools out there, and you're not alone. You've got Lukas, Brian, Wendy, and I. We're happy to help. We're coming to the end of our time together, and I just wanted to thank Brian, Wendy, and Lukas for sharing their expertise and experience with us. But before we sign off, I want to go around one more time to see if anyone has some last-minute thoughts on the topic. So, Brian?
I'll tell you, my last parting thought is I am, and our whole organization is just lit up with the possibilities of what can be done virtually. For something, that 3-4 months ago, I would never have would have taken a lot of convincing for me to think we'd make a business line out of it. Now I see this as something significant that, and it has so many more possibilities. And part of that, the way Wendy was talking, and I think you made the comment too, Laura, that people are now sort of trained to this format and used to it. That has just changed. There's been an attitude change and a acceptance change that is just making this something that I see has a really bright future ahead.
Great. Wendy, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I'll tack on to what Brian said. I'm in the same place. If you would have told me that I would have two completely separate arms of my business 3 months ago, I wouldn't have believed it. But I think it's just a testament to, there is opportunity in dark times, and, not just growing your business, but the fact that so many more people are able to hear these powerful messages and attend these types of events where they might not otherwise have attended, especially in the virtual space. So many of the event hosts are offering a free ticket. There's always the option to upgrade, but it makes information available that they might not A, even know exists, or B, otherwise attend. So I just feel like during the time that we're in, having the technology and the ability to go virtual, we're making such I joke that, it's not even the ripple effect anymore. It's the tsunami effect, because we have a global audience now. And even for speakers, it's allowing them more publicity and more opportunity to get their message out. So I just think that there's tremendous opportunity and good that has come from this pandemic.
Excellent. And we're going to end up with Lukas.
Well, I think there are a lot of people that have experienced a lot of financial pain through the turmoil, and hopefully those that used to do in-person events, for however long the in-person events are going to be disrupted, they take a look at what's available, and they also think about maybe they need to do their events slightly differently with a junior partner who just manages the tech so that they can focus on doing what they do best. Come at it with a team perspective, and they'll be surprised what they can do. By their second or third event, they'll be doing half of what that tech specialist was able to do, and they will get up the learning curve very, very quickly. So just as the other panelists have said today, go ahead and give it a try. Try as many different tools as possible, and you'll start to see that you become fluent in them. And it's an exciting space ahead because there's so much co-creation happening. And I think to speak for everybody here, we're just all excited to play our specific role in that process.
Excellent. Excellent. So that's all the time we have for today. Until next time, this is Laura Rose from Rose Coaching. Please stay safe, healthy, and happy.